They first appeared over 100 years ago. Giant, humanoid creatures with a taste for our blood. The brute strength of these aberrations trumped an average person's many times over. We were shoved to the brink of extinction almost overnight. The survivors erected walls Maria, Rose, and Sina, withdrawing behind them in frightened huddles for what was to be a century of uneasy peace. And then...
It deals with humanity being put to the brink of extinction by this strange, previously unheard of race of what are called Titans.
It is about a lot of people dealing with very, very horrific giants that have kind of taken over the world, and humanity is now retreated behind a series of walls.
I've seen every single other person in this office actively watching it because they want to. And when you work in anime full-time, it's your 40-hour-a-week job, or your more than 40-hour-a-week job. It's not that you start disliking anime, but you start seeking it out less, and your appreciation of it becomes different. So when I walk around the office and I see people from different departments, subtitling, marketing, production, editing, and they're all completely flipping out because they have to wait 24 more hours for Attack on Titan, that's a big deal. That's when you know you have something special.
There's some shows that come in and they'll get announced in a meeting that we have, and when they announced Attack on Titan, there was cheering. So I knew that this one had a lot of buzz, and anytime when there's a fan following for a show, it's always a little bit more fun.
Hello, I'm Mike McFarland. I'm the ADR director of Attack on Titan. We had 3 days of in-house auditions, hearing someone every 10 to 15 minutes. And by in-house, I mean just the ones that took place here in the studio. I also had a lot of people submitting via online from Los Angeles and Houston and New York and some other places of campsites of voice actors who I've worked with before.
So I went in and we went through 3 different characters. I read for 3 different characters, and I had notes on some of them. I did a second pass on one of them. I did some screaming, so I'm a little raspy at the moment. I like the screaming part. That's always cathartic.
The characters are very militant, so that's not hard for me because my voice is low. What was interesting is we had to scream, like, and he told us, I want you to go for it. Like, give everything you've got into this scream. I want to feel it shake. And I'm like, all right. So, I'm hunkering down, getting ready, because I'm going to pull it from here. And I screamed so loud, and I felt emotions coming from my gut.
Mike is wonderful to work with, and he's a wonderful director to audition for because he is, he's very good at he's got this very subtle but very charming intensity that I respond to very well.
It's a very long, grueling process. And by grueling, I just mean you do the same thing over and over again. But on my end of things, you have to keep it fresh for each new person that comes in. So even though I've explained what this character's like or what the show's like or what happens 900 times, I have to do it 901 and be just as energetic for each person, each new person that pops up, so that they can have an equal opportunity and an equal chance and an equal amount of enthusiasm on my part to help get what I need out of them from their audition.
Yeah, I always get nervous. You always get that, that butterfly feeling, or you hope that you're gonna do your best. I just deal with it. I guess the best way to put it is I don't necessarily deal with it. I just kind of put it aside, and then I feel it afterwards.
There's a buzz about it. It's always exciting when there's a buzz about whatever show is going on. And so even though I didn't overly research the show, I'm excited about it. Everybody's excited about it. So it's like, you got to do it.
Yeah, I look forward to being in it, because I will.
I prepare for an audition by, this is going to sound weird, but I'm a big, I'm not a public singer, but I'm a car and shower singer. So I'll shower because the humidity and everything helps my voice. And then on the drive to Funimation from Dallas proper. There's a lot of singing that goes on.
You know, it's difficult to prepare for an audition because you never know exactly what the director may be looking for. Sometimes it's a mistake to watch a show and maybe get a particular voice in your mind based on the Japanese, because what if the director wants to go in a different direction? It throws you a real curveball. The best thing you can do probably is do a little bit of research and figure out kind of what the show is basically about, what the characters are like. But I've found, at least over the years, that there is a risk in over-preparing.
For this particular show, some of the difficulties are with the fact that the cast is so large, like especially for a show that only has 25 and some change or so episodes, depends on how you want to count there's a couple of member terms, around 25 episodes. It has a lot of characters in it, a lot of named characters that recur or have a little tiny arc, or they're in these 4 or 5 episodes before they get eaten. There's just a lot of people that have a name and a function rather than, Soldier 8 in episode 10 or something like that. There are those guys as well, but there's a whole lot of people who recur throughout the series. Because of that, the casting, as I mentioned before, the getting the 3 leads in place, I have to continue going with everyone else as I go, as they come up. There's new characters introduced halfway through. We have the Survey Corps that comes into effect there. We have a lot more characters that come into play towards the end, like another 4 or 5 characters that are only in the last few episodes. We have characters that are introduced at the beginning and then they drop out for a while and come back. We have parents of characters. We have townspeople. We have crazy religious zealots. We have a whole bunch of people that need specific voices for it.
I think the most important quality a voice actor can have is the same as any actor, which is thick skin. You have to be tough. This business is about rejection.
A good attitude, really. Just be easy to work with.
The desire to always continue changing and growing, because we have our own natural, normal voices, and that's great, but if you're really going to evolve yourself as a voice actor, you have to learn everything about your own voice, and then you have to learn how to modify it, and you got to come up with as many different types of voices as you can.
Humility and a sense of, being easy to work with. I always feel like it doesn't matter how awesome you are. If nobody wants to work with you, nobody's going to work with you.
I think probably the most unique quality that a voice actor should have would be abandon, letting it all hang out. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of good actors go into auditions, and as soon as they get in front of the microphone, there's a bit of self-consciousness that comes over you. And so when you're supposed to be screaming bloody murder, you really need to be able to let that go.
The challenge on the actor's end for a show like this is not a super cartoony, over-the-top zany show. So what I need is a lot of people who use their speaking voice or something very close to it, where it's not a super affected, bizarre, thing that they're doing to their voice to make the character come out. Because everyone needs to sound like, regular people.
In terrified haste, the central government declared the outlier districts a lost cause and decreed all mankind retreat behind Wall Rose. Estimates held that nearly 10,000 lives were lost to the Titan offensive.
My name is Adam Zehner, and I'm Vice President of Acquisitions and Licensing here at Funimation, which means I'm sort of the first person to get to see all the content, and then I'm also one of the last people to work with the content. First, I get to talk with the Japanese and learn about all of their new programs for the upcoming seasons. We'll a lot of times read the manga or look at other source material to try to figure out what might be the best fits for our market. And then, negotiate, purchase the content. And then after it's been dubbed into English and we've started to ready the marketing campaign and finding the ways we're going to bring it out to market, then I will try to work with third parties, oftentimes a video game maker or T-shirt company, to try to create goods based on the series that hopefully the fans are excited to have at market.
Excuse me, what is all this?
We licensed Attack on Titan from Kodansha, who is actually the manga publisher. There were many companies, obviously, in the consortium that worked on it, but they had the international rights, so that's who we worked with. And, we've done a lot of shows with Kodansha, so we have a lot of trust with them, and we know if it's based on a Kodansha manga that there's probably very strong content there, because they're one of the largest publishers in Japan. We would have licensed it just before the simulcast season started, so it would probably have been early March or late February, I believe, is probably when we actually were able to pick that up. We see so many shows come through our desk. I'm probably looking at 40 to 50 shows every season by the time you look at movies and OVAs and things like that. And, you have to watch the beginning of all of them. And some of the shows just don't fit our market or might not fit your own personal taste or whatever. But every once in a while, when you see that one show that comes along your desk, you're just blown away. And I think that when we first saw Attack on Titan, we had actually looked at the manga. The manga had come out in 2012 in the US, at least the first volumes had come out then. And we really liked the story. Then we started to hear that maybe this was going to be produced into an anime, so we kind of kept tabs on it. And when we found out a little bit more about who was involved, we got very excited. But sometimes you're excited because the director's great, the scriptwriter's great, the studio's great, and then you see it and you're like, didn't quite live up to my expectations or that sort of thing. But when we got to see Attack on Titan, we were maybe it was more than we expected. It was a fantastic show. So I think there were a lot of parties that were interested. I know Funimation was not the only company out there trying to get it, but we were. I think when we actually got word that it had been licensed, myself and a couple other people here took off about 5 that day and had a little happy hour because we were ecstatic that we were going to be the company that got to bring this to the U.S. fans.
Impossible! We've got to get the hell out of here!
I think Attack on Titan is like a Dragon Ball or a Sailor Moon. Maybe not necessarily that it runs for 10 years and maybe sells quite as much, although by all means, I hope it does. But what I have noticed about Attack on Titan is that it has broken out of what I think of as our very strong anime community and has reached a wider audience. I know at one point I heard Denny's was tweeting about Attack on Titan. So there are people who know that I work at Funimation that might not be anime fans, and in the last 6 months, people have come up to me and been like, "Hey, you work with Funimation, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "I just saw a show of yours, this Titan," and I'm like, "Oh, where'd you see it?" And they'll have seen it on Hulu or someplace like that. And through that, they're starting to get interested in other shows, and I think that, Funimation we feel very confident at the level of content we have. I think if more people had the chance to be introduced to it, that it would resonate with a very wide group of people. But it takes a really strong show to get people to try it. And I think Attack on Titan is that show. I think Attack on Titan is going to open a lot of people's eyes to the incredible talent and imagination of the creators in Japan, the high level of the studios, the actual production. And I think you're going to see some people finding anime that didn't know that they liked anime. So I hope Attack on Titan is that. I hope it introduces people into the anime world and brings them in to stay. And I think Attack on Titan has that power.
Once we lose mobility, we're as good as dead! See through the veil of her composure. She's letting adrenaline distract her from grief. We need time.
My name is Trenton Jons. I'm the production coordinator here at Funimation, and so we have anywhere between 5 and 7 active recording studios, and so I'm talking with Japan every day, making sure that we get everything we need from Japan, where it was originally released, into our booth so we can make a successful English dub on it. With Attack on Titan, I got the straight translations from the studios over there, and then I had to get that with the original video, and we sent that on to our writers, who then make the English adaptation for it, which makes it a little bit more Western friendly. So basically what I do and have to do with the Attack on Titan is just, there's so many departments that are going to work on it, between mix engineers, between editing, between copywriting. I just make sure that every department has what they need so that they can do their job.
I'll never give up again. Because if I die, these memories of you die with me. That's why I'll do whatever it takes to win, whatever it takes to live.
My name is Sarah Alice Lindholm, and I'm the Quality Assurance Translator at Funimation, which is a fancy sounding title, but it basically means I'm the translator that's here in the office, and so I can troubleshoot problems that come up while we're in the office. I can be an on-site resource for people. I also periodically proofread other people's translations, and I do all the testing to try to keep all of the quality of translations at Funimation sound. So being an anime translator, which I've been doing for 10 years now, is its own unique kind of challenge in that you work in it full time. You don't get to just work on the shows that you like. You don't get to just work on the shows that you're comfortable with. So as a translator, you find yourself in a lot of situations where you might feel really uncomfortable with the subject matter, or you might have a problem and you might not know how to bring it up. You maybe kind of don't want to talk about it, it's a little uncomfortable, or something about what you're working on is hurting you, and that can be a big deal because regardless of the kind of show, whether it's your Attack on Titans of the world or your whatever else it may be that just doesn't float your boat, you still have to bring your A game every single time. That's just an ethical issue. So one of the things that I actually do at Funimation is I maintain a very casual relationship with all of the contract translators, and as soon as we sign someone, we say up front, okay, your relationship with me is going to be a little different than everyone else because I'm the person that if there's a sex joke that you don't understand or you just got nothing and you have to ask someone, it's going to be me. So we're going to approach this working relationship in a very different way. And simulcasts, they're often, even if there is a pre-existing manga, you don't know necessarily that the story is going to follow the same route, or maybe it's going to go past the manga or something like that. So even if you have resources available, you don't ultimately know where the story is going. And that means there's almost inevitably going to be revisions like every week. Sometimes with simulcasts, we get revisions midweek, and we have to go to Hulu and say, we need to update this. So the simulcast world is a very revision-intensive one, and individual episodes can take longer. It also just depends on the content. There's something very, very unique about the anime industry in the United States that is different translation-wise than pretty much any other kind of work, even in TV, which is that we translate simultaneously for two audiences. We translate for the subtitle audience, and we translate for the ADR writers. So our scripts, if you were to look at translation scripts that are put out by anime companies that dub, like Funimation does, or Seraphim does, they look completely different than anything that you would see from anyone else because we write the translation with the hope that it can go onto subtitles as is. So we're working with the length requirements. It's got to be, 2 lines. We're breaking it up into subtitle-sized chunks, but we're also trying to write in a way that all of the information that maybe won't fit in the subtitle or just doesn't convey itself in writing but would convey itself through acting is still there for the ADR writers. So if you were to look at one of my scripts or the Attack on Titan scripts, Attack on Titan was translated by Clyde Mandelin, and he would leave copious notes in all of his scripts. I leave copious notes that you don't see on, your subtitled DVD. If you're watching subtitles, sometimes people think, well, that's the translation and everything else is something else. That's actually only a small part of what we do. We also leave as much information as we can to make the dubbing process easy and to make the writing process smooth and as accurate as possible on that end, too.
That's right! The outer gate is history! The Titans are in! This means the armored Titan is likely to reappear! If and when he does, the inner gate will also be history!
Is this real? Please be a dream.
Hello, I'm J. Michael Tatum. I'm lead adaptive writer for the scripts for Attack on Titan, and in the show I also play Erwin.
There's a swarm of Titans moving north. They're bearing down on the city. It's just like 5 years ago. Something tells me this is going to be bad.
Once a writer gets the translation, we're generally given about a week to churn out a 23 to 25-minute script. So that is roughly how long. From there, then it has to go through a polish phase where it's looked at, and then the head writer, John Bergmeyer, then looks at a batch of the scripts that have been turned in over the period of a month, and then they are turned in as a group. Usually about 6 or so scripts are turned into the booth. Usually, I think that turns around about a month. It's such a popular show that you have to pay really close attention to what's already out there in terms of, we try not to change too much of the terminology or things that audiences are already going to be familiar with, because that's always the challenge of an adaptive script, is to try to bring it home into English for an audience who 9 times out of 10 is already very familiar with the show. In fact, already has a very profound relationship to the original Japanese. So you have to kind of pretend not to be an interloper and come in and try to make it new and fresh in English. And in Titan, that's particularly difficult because of the size of the cast. There are so many characters. I think at last count it was something like 72 characters that recur throughout the series. Obviously, some are in the entire series and some are in it for a lot less longer than others, but that's incredibly difficult to make each character sound distinct in the adaptation process, but that is what we do and why we get paid the big bucks to do it.
Armin! Glad I caught you. Here, Grandpa scrounged a little extra by telling the powers that be he had kids.
That was nice of him.
The 3 leads, Eren Yeager is to be voiced by Bryce Papanbrook, and Trina Nishimura is voicing Mikasa Ackerman, and Armin Arlert is voiced by Josh Grelle. As far as why for each of them, Bryce wasn't actually even someone that I had on my list of people to hear. He was referred by Patrick Seitz, who I work with all the time. And I had heard his name before, and I'd heard some of his work from Sword Art Online and a few other series. I'm like, yeah, let me hear him. Let me hear what he's got. And so he was one of many people that submitted via email that couldn't be here for the actual 3 or 4 days that we had the audition process. And going through and listening to his files as the Eren audition starts with one specific type of dialogue and then another, and then it gets really emotional, and then it gets super screamy. And as each progression, as I got to each section, I was like, wow, that sounds good. Wow, that sounds really good. Oh, that scream is amazing. So he instantly became one of the top choices, and as I narrowed down the field, it became clear that he was the right choice.
What are you saying? After everything we saw that day, after what happened to my mom? You're crazy if you think I'm just gonna walk away.
For Mikasa Ackerman, Trina Nishimura is someone who's worked with me many times over the years. Her audition for Mikasa was fantastic. Trina has a really good voice for, it's a hard thing to cover too. I need someone that can sound very, very tough and can really lose themselves with rage when the time comes and that needs to happen, and for that to sound like it, not just loud and not just a scream, but like a just bloodthirsty, vengeful scream if it needs to happen. And she can do that while still doing timid, soft, dramatic work, and also sounding like she's in the right age range vocally. She also, in her audition process, went right to the top, narrowed the field down, and she became my choice.
Eren, if things take a turn for the worse, I want you to come find me, all right?
What? We're in completely different squads.
Look, this is gonna get ugly, and when it does, the plan goes out the window.
Armin was the one that was a bit more difficult of the 3 to cast. I heard both male and female voice actors for the role. The role was portrayed by a female voice actor in Japan. But as I continued to watch the show and continued to find out more and more about the show, like for instance, the narrator that you hear at the top of several episodes is supposed to be, and this isn't a spoiler, but it's just nothing that you would know from watching the show in Japanese to begin with. It's supposed to be Armin reflecting back on this time period. So despite the fact that it sounds like a grown woman, that's supposed to be Armin at a later point in his life. So with that knowledge and with taking both male and female auditions into account, I really thought that Josh captured the character the best of everyone that I heard. And I'm really happy with the work that he's doing so far.
Don't worry, I'm fine. Just give me a second for my nerves to settle. This is bad, isn't it? There's a hole in the wall 8 meters wide, and we don't even remotely have the engineering know-how to plug it.
What's up, Trina?
Hi.
Hello. Before we get going, let's listen to a little bit of the last bit of stuff you did when you were in here yesterday.
Okie dokie. My name is Trina Nishimura, and I play Mikasa on Attack on Titan.
Mikasa Ackerman, model cadet, excels in everything. In fact, it's no overstatement to call the girl a genius.
Mikasa is a really amazing character. I have always, I think, especially, you know, the anime that was coming out 10 years ago that I was involved in, there weren't that many girl heroines. Traditionally, in a lot of cultures, the girl is the smart one and never the strong one. So I like that Mikasa is emotionally strong. I like that she's physically strong. I like that she's the best fighter out of the group. I think that that is a huge step in the right direction as far as gender roles in anime.
Let's grab it one more time. I like the level of intimacy that we have, and I like the breath equality. Maybe just a hair stronger with your conviction on the second line.
Heard.
His name needs to sound just like what you did it in the previous take.
Okay.
Just a little bit more like, I will not do that. Have more conviction. Here we go.
Why'd you?
Armin. I will not leave you behind.
Cool, very good. Move to Armin from one take back. And everything else from this take.
Hot water's the best.
Thanks, brah.
Thanks, brah.
Armin. I will not leave you behind.
Is it good for you, Gino? Is it?
Great.
It's good for you, Gino?
Fantastic.
You like that?
Love it. Like it a lot.
More of it.
How's it going? My name is Bryce Papanbrook, and I play Eren Yeager in Attack on Titan.
Eren Yeager, lackluster in the classroom, marginally better in the field.
Eren is the main guy. He's what the story is sort of surrounding. He's a young kid that grows up in this insane world that is filled with these monsters, and he goes through sort of a tragic upbringing and gets really, really angry. So the story is sort of surrounding that rage. It's awesome.
Fight! Fight! Kill or be killed! The only way to live is to fight!
Right now, we're just about halfway through the series. I'm from Los Angeles, so the commute is a little further than I'm used to. It's kind of interesting to fly into town and then work for an extended period. It's really cool because normally my sessions are broken up into smaller pieces, so you only sort of see fractions of an episode. But every time I come out to Texas, we've been doing 6 or 7 episode chunks. So it's nice to get a big piece of the story and then sort of see how the performance has played out and how it all, you know, comes together.
All right, everybody ready? Everybody good?
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. So this is after Eren wakes up. He went into Titan form, and you know we don't see on screen how he was rescued, but we see that he's in the arms of Armin and Mikasa, and he wakes up to find himself surrounded by the garrison. So we are at 121 as you're starting to come out of the days of your your creepy "you're gonna die" line. So you come out of it that way, and then you gasp when you realize that you're surrounded. So 121 and 122 preview.
My name is Matthew Mercer, and I play the role of Levi. Levi, I guess you would call is the proverbial quiet, badass character. He's largely regarded as the most accomplished fighter and Titan killer in the entire, not just Scout Regiment, but probably the entire human, city, this last bastion of society. He's regarded very highly, but he's still largely a very cold character. He's very calculating. He's very reserved with his emotions, and comes off as very judgmental in some cases, loosely sarcastic in his responses. And I mean, a lot of them, he is genuinely sarcastic and genuinely cold. But he's a good man who is fighting for a good cause, and he does care for people. He keeps it on the DL.
One on the right, 2 on the left.
Captain! The reinforcements are here, sir!
Good. Tend to our comrade below, Petra. You two, take out the Titan to your right. The pair on the left belongs to me.
The most important responsibility as I'm recording with the actor, I don't know if there's one important responsibility, they're just important responsibilities, and that would be to make sure that we are telling the same story that was originally told in Japanese. A dub, in my opinion, is supposed to reflect the same experience, where someone from Japan and someone from America, through an interpreter, could talk about the show and how much they love it, how much they love the characters, and when this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and they're talking about the exact same events in the exact same show. That's one of them. Another is that each of the characters are approached with each character in mind and where they are in the show. We have to keep in mind what the original Seiyu sounded like. They were selected for a reason, and we need to honor what was already there while still maintaining our own character.
Okay, so that's your tone, and the flaps are substantially different.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to start off with the I never have, which was the original ending of this thought.
Yeah.
Should I go out on my own a little slower, or should I put myself in the hands of my comrades a little slower? Either way, there's no guarantee.
Okay.
Let's try that.
Now, I noticed 129 is about, I have it about a second later from where it says it should be.
That's fine. Yeah. Here we go. You want to preview it, or are you good?
Let's give it a shot.
Okay, here we go.
Truth is, I don't know which is better. I never have. Should I go out on my own? Or should I put myself in the hands of my comrades? Either way, there's no guarantee.
We'll check it out. Do we need to come up in volume? Cool. Thanks for persevering with no beeps. Gino appreciates it.
So when you are in the booth at Funimation, the director and the audio engineer sit outside of the actual recording room. So when I go into the recording room, I have 2 screens. One screen will have the script on it, the English adaptation of the show, and the other screen will have the animation itself. So as I'm watching the animation, I'm actually also reading the script. So the director will play the scene or, the few lines or whatever of the show. And that way you can kind of see what the Japanese did in their interpretation and read along in English. And then after that, they cut the Japanese part out and then you actually record. So you're standing there with 2 screens and your microphone, and then there's a little circle pop screen in front of the microphone, and that is to protect the sound quality. And so instead of like popping your P's and things like that, it kind of just acts as a barrier towards that.
I bore witness to the manifestation of humanity's rage. Cool, so we are right there. 224 preview.
その光景は人類の怒りが体現されたように見えたから。
In awe of the scenario.
So primal. I bore witness to the manifestation of humanity's rage. I bore witness to the manifestation of humanity's rage.
Cool. Give her more pre-roll. It should be more of a, rather than a negative thing, kind of a cool thing. I was trying to think of nicer, bigger words for a moment, but I can't really think of any. So that led into like, and then something weird and horrible happened. It should be like,
and then
this
something
really awesome, cool thing happened. Yeah, go with the amazing.
Okay.
Here we go.
The engineers are so important. it's really impossible for an actor to hit perfect sync unless you get really lucky or you're just a superhuman. The engineer can slide things by a frame. They can pick the best versions and blend everything together so it sounds perfect and natural. So my hat's off to them. They make me sound good, especially in Titan form. I do not sound like I'm 15 meters tall. And I don't have a booming voice. So they're the ones that are taking it and making it really intense, making it hit those subwoofers when I growl.
The engineers make the project move quickly. They help adjust timing to lip flap when it's required. They make sure the mix levels are proper. They make sure that everything is on task and moving forward. I actually come from a lineage of sound engineers, so I have a long, deep-seated love for anyone who can, deftly maneuver through Pro Tools.
Good for you, Gino? All right. Looking at your response. What?
What?
175 preview.
化け物を見ているような。俺がそうだというのか。質問の意味がわかりません。
Cool. Call it out, cover that distance. You can play off of how loud he's been yelling at you. Here you go.
Like they're looking at a monster. Oh, God. Is that what they think? I'm sorry, sir! I don't understand!
Cool.
We're just playing innocent.
Volume is great. Have a little bit, slight more confused, nervous sound to it.
Cool.
I don't find reaction sounds necessarily more complicated. I enjoy it. I enjoy the guttural yells and the screams and the combat reaction sounds. It's been kind of just a fun, it's a fun outlet for one thing. It's a great way to blow off some steam. But I wouldn't say it's more complicated per se. Dialogue can definitely get really complicated, especially when there's long character diatribes or just circumstances in which emotions are heightened.
All right, slower front, faster back.
Got it.
Just by a little bit on both. Here we go.
Down a bit. That fight wore out, too. It looked like she may have bitten the entire nape off to me. It's unlikely Eren survived.
Before we even preview that, can you play me the Japanese one more time?
Some people work really well watching an entire scene, me giving a very long explanation of the world and the universe and their place in it, or their history or their background, where they are on a social class structure. Some people respond really well to just hearing what the seiyuu is doing and playing off of that, like, okay, that's really soft here, and it's this, and okay, that works well with him walking into the room this way and delivering these lines and walking up into a shadow and then screaming from outside. All of that information, all the technical information helps them out a lot. Me guiding them along with specific things that I need, knowing what this other actor's read is going to be like, and this other actor who's all going to enter this conversation at at whatever point in this scene that involves 5 or 6 people. It's my job to make sure that each piece fits in place where it doesn't sound like 5 or 6 people just randomly throwing out lines. It needs to sound like they're all standing there as real characters in a real world having a conversation.
It's been an amazing experience working with Mike. It's always interesting. You never know how it's going to be when you work with a director for the first time. And working with Mike, we sort of hit it off right from the first session. It was really a relief when I came in and things just clicked so well. He's made my time here so much fun. Every recording session has just flown by and it's gone smoothly, and I really like the performance he's gotten out of me. He's pushed me past my comfort zone, especially with the rage and the screaming, and taking it past where, I feel like I'm in control of my voice. And he says, no, past that point where you're no longer in control and you can hear it cracking and raw and nasty. I love that he's gotten that just disgusting sounds coming out of me in this performance.
Working with Mike on Attack on Titan has been different than Evangelion or Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I think that working with him now, he and I have a stronger relationship than we first did when I first started working for him, obviously. And, you get to know somebody and you get to know their quirks and their things and working with them. And working with him, he's very clear about what he wants. And he's very smart about sticking to the Japanese interpretation, especially when it's so important, or when the property or the title is has such a cult following. He tries to stay very true to the Japanese in general. With Attack on Titan, he has kind of, I guess, let up the reins a little bit, if I can use a Texas term. He's kind of relaxed the entire thing and given me more leeway, which has been really fun and great artistically. So that's been great. He's a great guy. He's very funny, and he also knows me well enough to like stop pushing or push harder. And he's very smart about how he utilizes his actors.
The mixer takes the elements that I give him as far as the voice work, which my engineer has, labeled properly, and they've cleaned it all up. If there's any nasty noises and stuff, those are all gone, except for some. I like some of them to sound nasty and raunchy. If they're screaming or, crying or whatever, it doesn't need to be too cleaned up, because then you're cleaning up part of the performance. But beyond that, all the clicks and pops are gone. Everything fits really well. Everything flows. Everything sounds nice and conversational. That's handed off to the mix team. They let me know if there's any weird problems with the file, like this one has a bump in it, or this one was recorded not quite loud enough, and by the time that we get it to the volume that we need, it's going to be some and some background noise in it, therefore it won't sound right with everything else around it. Once all of that's in place, they find a nice pocket where everything in the center channel, where most of the dialogue takes place, where everything needs to sit. They find the moments when there's some panning to do, or when someone's in the surrounds, or when something needs to hit the sub, the LFE, and puts it all in a good spot for me. I usually give a general note of what I want everything to overall sound like how cinematic versus broadcast television, how much, like a typical crime investigative type television show versus something like Lord of the Rings, what sort of mixed style are we going for? What did they do originally, and what can we learn from that, and what can we use from that for our approach? Upon my review, there are certain elements that I very much want to have a say-so in, where the dialogue sits versus the music and the sound effects and things of that nature. If there's enough clarity in what's being said, sometimes we'll have a little tug of war with the music and the sound effects and whatever else, where the original Japanese performance was huge explosion and music sweep, and the character goes, how important is, and in the real world, if that explosion was behind them, would you just have that, or would you be able to hear it? We have to go through this decision process. But I think the mix is one of the last big important things that happens in the process, and it's equally as important as anything before it. And I'm glad that our mix team is, really amazing at what they do, and that they can communicate with me well, knowing that I don't have a mixed technical background where I can just communicate from an emotional standpoint of what it is that I want to hear.
This show is really something special. I think it's going to be extremely popular with the fans. When I watched it for the first time, I was totally shocked. The twists that it takes you through are insane. There's no way you can guess what's going to happen. It's going to be huge, I think.
Attack on Titan is already super popular with the fans, so I'm hoping that the dub will allow for a new group of fans to appreciate the show and to, fall in love with the story, just as so many people before them had already seen it in its original broadcast. I think the dub will definitely allow a bunch of people who may or may not be interested in watching something subtitled to have a chance to see this story and to watch it, and, much in the same way that I talked about it before, to talk about people who've already seen it, maybe, someone who's already seen it in Japanese or whatever, and they could talk about the same moments of the show and enjoy the same process of finding out the information week after week and go through that same traumatic experience that others have already done.
I hope it's really popular. Heck, I have a lot of friends in LA that have been obsessed with the show when it aired in Japan. Like, I'm excited to see what the real response is when we have the English dub and the large-scale release here in the U.S. It's a fantastic show. The story's great. It doesn't slow down. It's constantly just upping the ante, and all the characters are intriguing, and it has this bleak intensity at the same time with a couple characters that hold on to the growing hope that just keeps you going and going and pulling you in further, and the mystery unfolds slowly enough to the point where you're not having everything given away up front, but not too slow to the point where you lose interest. It's a really, really fantastic cross-section of everything that I honestly enjoy out of not just anime, but a lot of entertainment. And I thoroughly enjoyed it more than I expected I would. And I expected I'd enjoy it pretty well, so I have high hopes for the response to it.
I hope Attack on Titan will be popular with fans. I mean, people are already cosplaying, so that's a good sign. And people have a lot to say about what the property is going to be like and who will be cast. At this point, we haven't announced the cast yet, and I totally Googled. I normally buy you a drink first, but I Googled. So I Googled, and there are a lot of forums and a lot of people that have a lot of opinions about who should be cast and who shouldn't be cast, and should Funimation have it or should we not, and this and that. And there are a lot of opinions about how it should be recorded and the certain things that should be done or have to be done. And on one page it'll say, you have to do A, and on the other page it'll be like, you have to do B, because if you do A, it's dumb. And so I think it'll be harder to please everyone, but I totally stand behind the team that has been assembled here, the director and the cast, and myself. I feel pretty confident that it'll be I feel really confident that it'll be a great show and that people will like it.
Has it really been 5 years? Look at us, ready to stand tall again. We can do it. Mankind didn't start this fight, but we're gonna finish it.
This is one hell of a good show, and I know that there's a lot of fans of this show, and I hope that it brings a whole new audience with the dub that we're working on. But I also hope that the fandom will just spread over every fandom. I think this is one of those shows where we can bring in a lot of people who may not have ever seen anime before. It's definitely a gateway property, and I know that a lot of people are looking forward to watching it.
You know, I often say we're very lucky in that we have some of the most passionate fans that are out there. Our fans are the people that allow us to go out there and purchase this content and adapt it and bring it out to the U.S. audience. Without them, I think the anime market would start to shrink back to where it was before there was people doing English localizations. And, you know, I think that when you talk to the Japanese creators, that's not what they want. The Japanese creators envision their content getting out and being introduced to a wider audience. And our fans allow us to do that. I thank our fans for all that support. Keep coming out and talking to those creators, because at the end of the day, what we all want is we want more of these stories to be told and for them to have more of a chance to let us peek inside their minds and see their creativity.
I'm just so thrilled to be working on this show. I absolutely love it. And thank you guys for watching. I know you're going to love it too.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for supporting this, for supporting all of us, for being fans of the project. My message to you is, for those of you who are big fans of the character Levi, be gentle.
Fans they're great. They're what allow us to do what we do.
I do just want to thank the fans, because they are the reason that I get to do what I do and what I love. I'm really blessed and eternally grateful that, you know, I work in an industry that has such devoted fans and such great people. I mean, just getting to meet everybody at cons has been awesome, and I really hope that they like Attack on Titan, and I hope that, you know, when it does get released and when the cast is announced and when, you know, we're not in secret mode anymore, I really want to put something out there that they're gonna love just as much as we do.
I want to thank you guys so much for, first of all, watching this interview, because us production people don't really get to talk a lot, and we enjoy being behind the scenes, making this stuff in the United States. And I hope you really enjoy Attack on Titan, because I know a lot of love and very careful thought went into this show. Everyone that's been dealing with it, from the translation to the dub to any kind of production to editing to the trailers, has been putting in such careful work. And hopefully, because you've gotten the chance to hear a little bit about people from different staffs, you might be able to see a little bit more of the work that usually goes under the radar, and I hope that it makes it that much more enjoyable.
I'd like to thank the fans out there for their support of this show. We love it just as much as you guys do, and we love working on it, and we hope that you love watching it.
Thank you, guys.
I think at the core of the story, and this is kind of, I guess, my own personal spin on it, is that between what is out there, that is to say, beyond the walls that we erect in our daily life, and what is in here, that is to say, what we keep hidden, what we keep protected behind those walls, there has to be some level, however slight, of communication between the two. Otherwise, what is out there eventually turns into this kind of unfathomable wilderness that cannot be navigated or negotiated with. And what's inside becomes kind of atrophied and unusable. So I think that's ultimately what resonates most deeply with me in this series, is the extent to which the noblest of the characters in the show, I think, are noble because they venture outside of the walls and confront the terror and the beauty of what lies beyond their own security. Granted, they have no choice, because what's beyond the wall is coming in after them anyway, but that's often the case in our lives, at least on a psychological level. You know, you have to deal with the outside world because it's making inroads into your inner life, and being able to sort of rise to meet it is, I think, very, very important and very psychologically healthy. But ultimately, I think the show is very hopeful. I think the show is very, for all its darkness and all its blood and all its cruelty, ultimately, I think it is a very heroic and very positive sort of meditation on what we as human beings have to do to face the outside, as it were, which I think is, is what makes it such a compelling drama.